Well, Minister, you know the targets we have for 2020 in terms of carbon emissions, and which we're dismally failing to reach. And we have a new minister announcing an all-of-government action plan, which I presume means the actions that will be taken by each department. And I just wondered what impact that will have on spending in 2019, whether in fact there will be supplementary budgets. We've 8 supplementaries already. I have a question down on it, but it's not an oral question. Will it mean additional supplementary budgets for each of the departments so that this all-of-government plan is covered? Thanks, Cathaoirleach.
Thanks, Cathaoirleach. At the outset, I want to apologise for Minister Donoghue. He spoke to the Seanad for the finance bill. Policy responsibility for tackling climate change is a matter in the first instance for the Minister for Communications, Climate Action and the Environment. However, a sustained whole-of-government approach will be required to enable Ireland's transition to a low-carbon, climate-resilient and environmentally sustainable economy by 2050. The Minister for Finance, together with the Department of Public Expenditure and Reform, is committed to playing our part in this transition. The funding available to departments is determined through the annual budgetary and estimates process. Each department makes proposals on a range of measures they would like to implement in the coming year, and climate action measures are embedded within the proposals from those departments, covering sectors of the economy responsible for greenhouse gas emissions. It is therefore a matter for those individual departments to identify the amount which is being spent on climate action from within their own spending envelopes. The Department of Public Expenditure and Reform has committed under Action Point 12 of the National Mitigation Plan to develop proposals for identifying, monitoring and reporting of climate-related expenditure through the Exchequer. As a first step, this year's revised estimates, volume the Rev, will tag climate-related expenditure in a separate section of that report. Ireland has also joined the OECD Paris Collaborative on Green Budgeting. The objective of the Department of Public Expenditure and Reform and the Minister in joining this initiative is to integrate environmental and climate outcome-based reporting into our annual budgetary processes. This will be an iterative process, but Ireland's participation in the Paris Collaborative will lead to more transparency on the level and effectiveness of Ireland's climate expenditure. In addition, Cathaoirleach, to funding made available to the departments for tackling climate change through the annual budgetary and estimates process, the National Development Plan and Project Ireland 2040 also provides significant increased levels of funding for climate action-related measures. Project Ireland 2040 commits a record level of investment for climate change initiatives over the next decade, with €2.1 billion specifically allocated for National Strategic Outcome No. 8, transition to a low-carbon and climate-resilient society, and I understand that some of that announcement will be made later on in the week. Cathaoirleach. A number of the other national strategic outcomes in the National Development Plan are also directly relevant to delivering on our climate action goals. €14.5 billion is allocated to ensure compact smart growth, and a further €8.6 billion is being allocated for investment in environmentally sustainable public transport.
Thank you, Minister. We'll come back to you.
I'll just finish, Cathaoirleach. While €8.8 billion is allocated for sustainable management of water and other environmental resources.
Thanks, Cathaoirleach. Well, obviously, you had an opportunity in the senior minister had an opportunity in the budget to actually deliver some sort of a green budget. Now we're talking about an all-of-government action plan, but Minister, you don't really seem to have any kind of funding for it. And if you do, it'll have to be approved by this House. But our Parliamentary Budget Office, as you know, Cathaoirleach, one of his many excellent reports, has reported on climate change and the very grave concern that we've missed our targets 2016, 17, we're missing it this year. It looks like we could be facing fines of anything from 65 million to 130 million per % that we miss for the 2020 target. And your own department, I think, Minister, quantified this in general as possible a fine of 600 million. An astonishing figure could be facing us in the year 2020. The report I refer to, I mean, it shows us, I think, second last among the EU nations in relation to our mitigation plans performance. And the reality is you seem to have done almost nothing by comparison with countries like Sweden, many of our other European partners, to actually address this. And the opportunity you had, for example, even in relation to transport in budget 2019, you just didn't want to know in relation to agriculture, in relation to aviation. You haven't taken any of the steps, Minister, and when the general election happens, happens and there's a new government, you're handing that government a fierce problem in relation to climate action.
Thank you, Deputy Minister, please.
Well, whether or not there's a general election, I don't think is really relevant to the question, with due respect, and this government. Yeah, well, you might. Well, none of us might be here, Deputy, so don't preempt the decisions of the good. Don't preempt the decisions of the good people of Dublin Bay North. There might be none of us here. But just in relation to what the government has actually done in the budget, every element of government expenditure throughout, and every government department that came in a bilateral relationship, and whether I'm the senior minister or the junior minister, you know, it might be unfortunate that the senior minister isn't here. The policies of the government are a whole of government policies, and there is green budgeting already incorporated into this year's budget. You only need to look at the continuation of the VRT for cars, the hybrid cars, the decision of the Department of Transport to continue investing in green buses, so that the bus fleet is going to be bought by the state under Project Ireland 2040 will be of a green nature. Our commitment to phasing out money pint, our commitment to phasing out the extraction of peat. These are all issues that are going to be transformative in relation to our total overall emission of carbon dioxide. And from an agricultural point of view, and I had this discussion with another urban TD during the weekend, the fact of the matter is that the farming community and the agricultural sector are playing a huge part already in relation to making Ireland far greener. And the Department of Agriculture, in its bilateral relationships with the Department of Public Expenditure and Reform, in which I am the junior minister, and I know you regret that because it's not the senior minister that's given you the answer, have climate action mitigation measures in there as well.
Deputy Broughan, your final.
I represent an urban constituency, but I come from a rural part of Dublin, so I know many of these issues, Minister, way back since my childhood. But the reality is, you had an opportunity in Budget 2019, you know, to set out. I mean, why didn't we have the all-of-government action plan then, and with specific tasks for each department, or the departments to come back to you with those tasks, and then you quantify, you know, what kind of funding is going to be necessary. It seems, for example, if you do cost-benefit analysis on this, if we do take the actions we need to take, it's going to be far cheaper than the European Commission coming along and asking us to pay 500 million or 600 million, something that would fund, you know, extraordinary amount of in housing or in health or whatever. So, I mean, it has to be said, you have a very poor record, I think, in government in this matter. And we do need, I think, I'm a member of the Budget Committee, Minister, we do need, you know, ex-ante assessments of whatever you want to achieve in each department next year. I mean, that's the reality. We want to see Minister Broughan has gone into the department, suddenly announced this. We want to see, in actual fact, that fleshed out and to see where the money is coming from. Thanks, Can. Or Cathaoirleach.
All of a sudden, in relation to Dublin Bay North, in relation to whether or not we have a very poor or very good record in government, the fact of the matter is, and the Taoiseach, I think, outlined it here last week in relation to a whole, this isn't the climate action agenda is not just a government agenda, and there has been a challenge laid down to deputies like yourself as well. Like, how much are you going to charge the people of Ireland per tonne of carbon? Deputy Eamon Ryan put up a challenge to the leader of the Fianna Fáil party, to the leader of the Labour Party, the leader of Sinn Féin. I don't know whether he put up a challenge to your own leader or not in relation to how much would you charge per tonne of carbon. But I think it's a very, considering that this is a whole of societal issue in the same way as the water issue was, and we know how that has wound up, and there's a lot of stories to be told in that yet, and we'll rue that day yet. However, I think that there's a whole of society. Well, there's people in my constituency, and you claim to know an awful lot about rural Ireland. There's people in my constituency that are paying for water, people in Deputy Cowan's constituency, people in Minister Moran's constituency that are paying for water. We're not averse to it at all. I'm laying down the same challenge to you as the Taoiseach did. How much would you charge per tonne of carbon? Let's put your figure on the table. Let's quantify it. Let's put the government's figure on the table. Let's put everybody's figure on the table. And at least then, let's take a whole of government and a whole of society approach to this, rather than kicking it around because it happens to be a Dublin Bay North minister.
Thank you very much.